When predators become prey. The warning klaxon screamed through the cargo hold of the Wandering Star as Captain Sarah Chen felt her stomach drop. 3 massive shadows had materialized outside her viewport, their angular hulls bristling with weapon arrays that could vaporize her modest freighter without breaking hyperspace stride. The distinctive crimson markings of the Zephyrian Dominion gleamed against their obsidian armor like fresh blood on midnight. Sarah's weathered hands moved across the control panel with practiced calm, though her pulse quickened. At 38, she had learned to mask fear behind steady professionalism. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her jumpsuit bore the stains of honest work, or so it appeared. The Zephyrians saw exactly what she wanted them to see, a lone human cargo hauler, probably desperate for credits, definitely not worth their time. Unknown vessel, this is Dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath, the transmission crackled through her comm system. The voice carried that distinctive Zephyrian accent, sharp consonants filtered through vocal cords designed for different atmospheres. Cut your engines and prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in immediate vaporization. Sarah keyed her response with deliberate hesitation, letting just a hint of nervousness creep into her voice. This is cargo vessel Wandering Star, registry Terra 7749. I'm showing clean manifests and current navigation permits. Is there some problem? A pause. Then, your vessel was detected in the Kepler debris field Sector 94. That region has been declared off-limits to inferior species. You are under arrest for illegal salvage operations. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic shriek that made Sarah's teeth ache. Through her porthole, she watched Zephyrian shock troops in their distinctive powered armor march through the umbilical tunnel. Each soldier stood nearly 7 feet tall, their elongated limbs and predatory grace marking them as apex hunters who had never known defeat. Their civilization had conquered 47 star systems in the past century, reducing entire species to servitude or extinction with clinical efficiency. The airlock cycled open with a hiss. 6 soldiers filed into her cramped cargo bay, their weapons tracking every movement. Behind them came their leader, distinguishable by the gold trim on his armor and the additional sensor array mounted on his helmet. He moved with the fluid confidence of a predator entering a cage full of prey. I am Squad Commander Renth, he announced, his voice modulated through his suit's speakers. You will surrender your navigation logs and submit to neural scanning. Any deception will be met with correction. Sarah raised her hands slowly, palms open. Look, I don't want any trouble. I was just picking through some old wreckage looking for salvageable components. I didn't know the area was restricted. Commander Renth tilted his head, studying her through his visor. Humans, he said with obvious distaste. Always scavenging like the carrion feeders you are. What did you find in the debris field? Sarah gestured toward a series of sealed containers stacked near her workbench. Mostly junk, some old data cores, maybe a few intact power cells, nothing valuable. One of the soldiers pried open the nearest container and extracted what appeared to be a crystalline data storage device. The object was roughly hexagonal, about the size of Sarah's fist, and it pulsed with a faint internal light that seemed to respond to touch. Ancient human technology, though the Zephyrians wouldn't recognize it as such. Curious, Commander Renth mused, taking the device from his subordinate. This does not match known human manufacturing techniques. Where exactly did you find this? Sarah shrugged with practiced indifference. Floating in the wreckage of some old ship. Looked expensive, so I grabbed it. Why? Is it important? The commander's helmet sensors swept over the device, recording its dimensions and energy signature. Perhaps. You will accompany us to detention facility Chronos 7 for proper interrogation. Your vessel will be impounded pending investigation. 2 soldiers flanked Sarah as she was led through the docking tube into the Zephyrian ship's holding area. The Sovereign's Wrath was a masterpiece of military engineering, its corridors wide enough for rapid troop movement and tall enough to accommodate their imposing physiques. Every surface was designed for function over form, creating an environment that radiated cold efficiency. The holding cell was a cube of polished metal, 3 meters on each side, with a single bench bolted to one wall. A force field hummed across the entrance, its energy barrier invisible but unmistakably lethal to the touch. Sarah sat on the bench and waited, appearing to study her surroundings with the nervous curiosity of a civilian thrust into an incomprehensible situation. Hours passed. The ship's engines thrummed beneath her feet as they traveled through hyperspace toward their destination. Sarah used the time to inventory her environment, cataloging every detail with the trained eye of someone who had spent years learning to read danger in the smallest signs. The cell's construction was solid but not impenetrable. The guards rotated shifts every 4 hours. The ship's artificial gravity was set slightly higher than Earth normal, probably to disorient human prisoners. More importantly, she could feel something stirring deep in her chest, a warmth that started near her heart and spread outward like honey through her veins. It had been years since she'd felt the familiar tingle of her enhanced biology responding to stress. The Prometheus protocol was still there, dormant but not dead, waiting for the right conditions to activate. Sarah Chen was not just another human cargo pilot. 23 years ago, she had volunteered for Earth Defense Force's most classified project, an experimental program designed to create soldiers capable of operating behind enemy lines for extended periods. Only 7 candidates had survived the enhancement process, their bodies rebuilt at the cellular level to interface with technology that wouldn't be invented for another decade. The program had been shelved when Earth signed the Non-Aggression Pact with the Dominion. Officially, all Prometheus subjects had been discharged and returned to civilian life. Unofficially, they remained sleeper agents, their enhanced capabilities masked by neural dampeners that made them appear completely ordinary until activated by extreme circumstances. Being arrested by the galaxy's most feared military force certainly qualified as extreme circumstances. When the ship dropped out of hyperspace, Sarah felt the subtle shift in the artificial gravity that accompanied the transition. Through the narrow viewport in her cell, she caught her first glimpse of Detention Facility Kronos 7, a massive structure built into the surface of a dead moon, its towers and defensive arrays reaching up through the thin atmosphere like the spines of some enormous metal beast. The facility housed the Dominion's most dangerous prisoners, beings who had committed crimes against the state or possessed information deemed too valuable to execute outright. Sarah would later learn that several entire species' leadership cadres were imprisoned here, their civilizations leaderless and defenseless without them. Commander Renth personally escorted her from the ship to the facility's intake processing center. The corridors were wider here, designed to accommodate prisoners of various species and sizes. Sarah passed cells containing beings she didn't recognize, some humanoid, others decidedly not, all sharing the same look of defeated resignation that seemed to permeate the place like a fog. "You will be housed in Block 7, Level 15, Commander Renth informed her as they walked. "Your case will be reviewed by Interrogation Specialist Vextar within the next standard cycle. I suggest you use that time to consider the wisdom of cooperation." Sarah nodded meekly. "I just want to go home. I don't know anything about restricted zones or valuable artifacts. I'm nobody special." The commander's helmet turned toward her, and she could feel his gaze through the visor. "Perhaps. But the devices found in your possession suggest otherwise. Someone wanted those artifacts, wanted them badly enough to risk entering a quarantine system. We will discover who that someone is." The cell they assigned her was larger than the one on the ship, but no more comfortable. A metal sleeping platform extended from one wall, with basic sanitation facilities concealed behind a privacy screen. The walls were lined with what appeared to be scanner arrays, probably monitoring her vital signs and looking for concealed technology. What they couldn't detect was the network of microscopic enhancements woven throughout her nervous system. Bio-integrated circuits that registered as natural human tissue to any scanner not specifically designed to look for them. Even she had nearly forgotten they were there, so seamlessly had they integrated with her normal biological functions. As the first night cycle began and the facility's lights dimmed to simulate planetary day-night rhythms, Sarah lay on her sleeping platform and let her enhanced senses reach out through the walls. Her hearing, boosted far beyond human normal, picked up conversations from cells dozens of meters away. Her enhanced smell identified at least 12 different species in her immediate vicinity, their unique chemical signatures as distinct as fingerprints. Most importantly, her electromagnetic awareness was beginning to map the facility's electronic systems. Every power conduit, every data line, every sensor array was becoming visible to her enhanced perception like stars emerging as the sky darkened. The neural dampeners that had kept her abilities suppressed were breaking down under the stress of captivity, and with each passing hour, she could feel more of her true capabilities returning. In a fortified command center 3 levels above, Commander Vextar reviewed the preliminary scans of their new prisoner. The Zephyrian was older than Renth, his exoskeleton marked with the ritual scarification that denoted veteran status. His 4 arms moved independently as he manipulated multiple data displays, cross-referencing Sarah's biometric data with known databases. "Curious," he muttered to his aide, a younger officer whose own scarification was still fresh. "This human's stress indicators are unusual. Her heart rate and respiration suggest fear, but her brain activity patterns indicate something else entirely." The aide leaned closer to examine the readings. What do you think it means, Commander? Vextar's compound eyes gleamed in the display light. I think our simple cargo pilot may be more than she appears. Increase monitoring on her cell. I want to know if she so much as blinks unusually. Far below, Sarah smiled in the darkness. Let them watch. Let them wonder. They had made the same mistake that had cost 47 civilizations their freedom. They had assumed that because humans appeared weak and primitive, they actually were weak and primitive. It was a mistake they would not make again. As the facility settled into its night cycle routine, Sarah began the patient work of testing her rediscovered abilities. She started small, adjusting her body temperature by a few degrees, increasing her heart rate slightly, then returning it to normal. Each success brought more confidence, more awareness of just how much the Prometheus protocol had changed her. She was no longer just Captain Sarah Chen, cargo pilot and apparent scavenger. She was Phoenix, one of Earth's 7 guardians, and she had work to do. In a secure bunker buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Elena Rodriguez felt her coffee cup slip from suddenly nerveless fingers. The mug shattered on the floor of her office, sending hot liquid splashing across classified documents, but she barely noticed. The wall-mounted display in front of her showed a single line of text that made her blood run cold. Prometheus Unit 03. Neural dampeners offline. Activation imminent. Admiral Rodriguez had been hoping she would never see that message. She reached for her secure communication console and began typing a priority alert to the other 6 Guardian handlers scattered across Earth's defense network. After 23 years of peaceful coexistence with the galaxy's major powers, it appeared that humanity's ultimate insurance policy was about to be tested. On Kronos 7, Sarah Chen closed her eyes and let her enhanced senses reach deeper into the facility's systems. Tomorrow, she would meet this interrogation specialist Vextar and play the part of a frightened civilian for as long as necessary. But tonight, she would continue relearning what it meant to be humanity's hidden answer to galactic oppression. The Dominion had captured what they believed to be a harmless scavenger. Instead, they had awakened something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the species they had dismissed as beneath their notice. The sleeping giant was stirring, and when it fully awakened, the galaxy would remember why Earth's children should never be underestimated. Sleeping giants never sleep forever. The interrogation chamber was designed to break minds, not merely extract information. Vextar had constructed it according to psychological warfare principles developed over centuries of Dominion expansion. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, making occupants feel small and insignificant. The walls curved inward at subtle angles that triggered claustrophobia in most species. Temperature, air pressure, and humidity could be adjusted to create maximum discomfort for any prisoner's physiology. Sarah sat in the center of the room, strapped to a chair that monitored her vital signs and could deliver electrical stimulus if needed. She had been brought here after 3 days of isolation, 3 days during which her enhanced biology had continued its steady awakening. The neural dampeners were now completely offline, though she took care to hide the full extent of her returning capabilities. Commander Vextar circled her like a predator sizing up wounded prey. His 4 arms gestured independently as he accessed data displays that materialized in the air around them, showing her biometric readings, psychological profiles, and what little information the Dominion had about human physiology. Sarah Chen, he began, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic overtones of his species. 38 standard years old, licensed cargo pilot, registered on the colony world of New Sahara. No military record, no criminal history, no significant achievements of any kind. A thoroughly unremarkable specimen of an unremarkable species. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though internally she was mapping every sensor array, every data connection, every potential weakness in the chamber's systems. Her enhanced electromagnetic awareness painted a detailed picture of the room's electronic infrastructure, information that would prove useful later. The question that interests me, Vextar continued, is how such an unremarkable person came to possess artifacts that predate known human civilization by several centuries. These devices show manufacturing techniques your species shouldn't master for another millennium, assuming you survive that long. He gestured with one hand, and a holographic display materialized showing the crystalline storage devices they had confiscated from her ship. Sarah recognized them immediately, data cores containing everything from stellar navigation charts to defensive protocols, technology that Earth's hidden research facilities had developed in preparation for eventual conflict with the galaxy's major powers. I told you before, Sarah replied, letting a note of frustration creep into her voice. I found them floating in the debris field. I thought they might be worth something to collectors. I didn't know they were important. Vexitar's compound eyes gleamed. Ah. But that's where you're incorrect. Our analysis suggests these were not randomly discovered artifacts. They were placed in that debris field specifically for you to find. Someone is using you as a courier, possibly without your knowledge. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's climate control. If the Dominion had detected the planned nature of her mission, they might know more about Earth's defensive preparations than anyone had realized. She needed to deflect suspicion while gathering more information about what they had actually discovered. "I don't understand," she said, adding a tremor to her voice. "Are you saying someone set me up, that I was supposed to find those things?" "That is exactly what I'm saying." Vexitar moved to stand directly in front of her, his towering frame casting her in shadow. "The question is whether you're an unwitting dupe or an active participant in whatever scheme is unfolding. Neural scanning will reveal the truth, though the process may leave you significantly diminished mentally." Sarah's enhanced hearing caught the subtle change in air circulation that indicated additional personnel entering the chamber. Through microscopic adjustments in her peripheral vision, she spotted 3 technicians wheeling in what was unmistakably neural extraction equipment. The device looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a medieval torture device, its probe arrays designed to penetrate directly into a subject's brain tissue. This was escalating beyond what she could handle while maintaining her cover. Sarah's enhanced metabolism began producing combat stimulants, flooding her system with compounds that would boost her reaction time, increase her strength, and suppress her pain responses. At the same time, her bio-integrated communication systems came online for the first time in over 20 years. Buried in the subatomic structure of her enhanced nervous system, a quantum transmitter no larger than a virus began broadcasting on frequencies that wouldn't be discovered by Earth science for another decade. The signal was faint, designed to avoid detection, but it would carry across interstellar distances instantaneously through quantum entanglement principles that made conventional communication look like smoke signals. On Earth, Admiral Rodriguez was in the middle of a briefing when every alarm in the command center began screaming simultaneously. The wall displays flickered to life, showing star charts, tactical assessments, and personnel files as the facility's AI systems responded to the incoming signal. Prometheus Unit 03, threat level critical, requesting immediate extraction or support. Admiral Rodriguez felt her heart skip a beat. In 23 years of operation, no Prometheus unit had ever sent a distress signal. The Guardians had been designed to operate independently for years if necessary, their enhanced biology and training making them nearly self-sufficient even in the most hostile environments. "Get me everything we know about Phoenix's last known location," she barked to her staff. "I want satellite surveillance, communication intercepts, anything that might tell us where she is and what she's facing." The response came within minutes. Sarah's ship had been detected in the Kepler system before disappearing from all tracking systems. Intelligence reports suggested increased Dominion naval activity in that sector, though the reason remained unclear. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we're detecting quantum communications from the Chronos system. Minimal traffic, but the source appears to be Detention Facility Chronos 7. Admiral Rodriguez closed her eyes. Chronos 7 was one of the most secure prisons in the known galaxy, a facility specifically designed to hold beings considered too dangerous for standard incarceration. If Phoenix had been taken there, it meant the Dominion considered her a significant threat despite her civilian cover. "Activate the other Guardians," she ordered. "All of them. If Phoenix is in Chronos 7, she's going to need backup." Back in the interrogation chamber, Sarah made her decision. The neural scanner was being positioned above her head, its probe arrays extending toward her skull like the legs of some mechanical spider. Once it made contact, it would detect her enhancements immediately, exposing not just her true nature, but potentially compromising Earth's entire defensive network. She had to act now while she still had the element of surprise. Sarah's enhanced muscles tensed as she tested the restraints holding her to the chair. The straps were designed to hold beings much stronger than baseline humans, but baseline humans didn't have carbon fiber muscle enhancement and reinforced skeletal structures. She could break free, but only once. The moment she revealed her true capabilities, every advantage would be lost. "Commander," one of the technicians announced, "the scanner is calibrated for human neural architecture. We can begin extraction whenever you're ready." Vextar nodded, then leaned down to meet Sarah's eyes. "Last chance to cooperate voluntarily. Tell me who sent you, what your real mission was, and I might be persuaded to make this quick and relatively painless." Sarah looked up at him with what appeared to be desperate fear. "Please, I don't know anything. I'm nobody. I just haul cargo for a living. You have to believe me." "I believe you think that's true," Vextar replied. "But minds can be programmed, memories can be suppressed. The scanner will reveal everything, including things you don't remember knowing. The neural probe descended toward Sarah's skull, 6 inches away, 4 inches, 2 inches. She could feel the electromagnetic field it generated beginning to interact with her enhanced nervous system, threatening to disrupt the careful balance of bio-integrated technology that kept her abilities stable. 1 inch. Sarah moved. The restraints binding her arms snapped like paper as her enhanced muscles unleashed their full strength. Her left hand shot up to catch the neural probe before it could make contact, crushing the delicate sensor array in her grip. Her right hand struck the chair's control panel, sending feedback surges through the monitoring system that temporarily blinded the chamber's sensors. Vextar staggered backward, his compound eyes wide with shock. Impossible! Human muscle density cannot generate that level of force. Sarah stood, the remaining restraints falling away like broken chains. For the first time in over 20 years, she allowed her full capabilities to manifest. Her pupils dilated as her enhanced vision switched to broader spectrum analysis, revealing heat signatures, electrical currents, and structural stress points throughout the chamber. Her enhanced hearing picked up the rapid heartbeats of everyone in the room, the click of weapons being drawn, the whispered commands being transmitted through their communication system. "You're right," she said, her voice carrying a calm confidence that replaced the frightened civilian facade. "Baseline human muscle density can't generate this level of force, but I'm not baseline human." She moved with fluid grace that seemed to bend the laws of physics, covering the distance between herself and the nearest technician in a blink. Her strike was precise, targeting nerve clusters that would incapacitate without causing permanent damage. The technician dropped, stunned but alive. Vextar was reaching for his sidearm when Sarah's enhanced reflexes allowed her to cross the chamber and disarm him before his weapon cleared its holster. She didn't hurt him, merely relieved him of his tools and stepped back to a position where she could monitor all potential threats. "Now then," Sarah said pleasantly, "I think we need to have a different kind of conversation. My name is Captain Sarah Chen, but my operational designation is Phoenix. I'm a Prometheus Guardian, one of 7 enhanced humans created by Earth Defense Command to serve as final safeguards against existential threats to our species." Vextar's 4 hands trembled slightly as he processed this information. "Enhanced humans? That's impossible. Our intelligence indicates that your species lacks the biotechnology for such modifications." "Your intelligence is incomplete," Sarah replied. "Earth has capabilities we don't advertise. The Prometheus program was developed in secret, using technology that won't enter general circulation for decades. We were meant to be insurance, activated only if humanity faced extinction-level threats." She gestured around the interrogation chamber, her enhanced senses still monitoring every electronic system in the facility. Being arrested and subjected to neural extraction by the galaxy's most feared military power qualifies as an extinction-level threat. Warning alarms began blaring throughout the facility as Sarah's earlier electromagnetic disruption cascaded through the chamber's systems. Emergency lighting flickered to life, casting harsh shadows that made her appear even more formidable than her enhanced physiology suggested. "What do you want?" Vextar demanded, his professional composure beginning to crack. "Information," Sarah replied. "You said the artifacts I was carrying were placed specifically for me to find. I want to know how you reached that conclusion, what analysis you've performed, and what it tells you about Earth's defensive capabilities." Vextar hesitated, clearly calculating the risks of cooperation versus continued resistance. Sarah made the decision easier by casually crushing a piece of the neural scanner between her fingers, reducing advanced Dominion technology to scrap metal with minimal effort. "The quantum signatures," Vextar admitted reluctantly. "The data cores you carried show quantum entanglement patterns that suggest active communication with other devices. Our analysis indicates there are at least 6 other similar devices, all maintaining quantum coherence with a central hub." Sarah nodded. The other Guardians were still active, their own enhancement packages maintaining quantum links through their bio-integrated communication systems. If the Dominion had detected those links, they might be able to track the locations of her fellow operatives. "Where are these other devices?" she asked. "Scattered across multiple star systems. 3 are in Earth's solar system, 2 are in the Centauri cluster, and 1 appears to be mobile, moving through deep space toward the galactic rim." Sarah processed this information quickly. The pattern matched the deployment of Prometheus Guardians after the program's official termination. Earth had positioned them strategically throughout human space and beyond, creating a network of enhanced operatives who could respond to threats from any direction. "You've been tracking them," Sarah stated. It wasn't a question. "For several months," Vextar confirmed, "ever since our long-range sensors detected the quantum signatures. We originally thought they were some kind of new human weapon system. Now I understand there's something far more dangerous. They're people." Before Sarah could respond, the chamber's communication system crackled to life. A new voice filled the room, speaking in the clipped tones of Dominion Naval Command. All units, this is Fleet Command. Sensors are detecting massive hyperspace distortions in the outer system. Multiple contacts, unknown configuration. All defensive stations to alert status red. Sarah smiled for the first time since her capture. The cavalry was arriving, and they weren't coming quietly. Earth had received her distress signal and activated the other Guardians, but they had also done something unprecedented in the 23 years since the non-aggression pact was signed. They had sent the fleet. Commander Vextar, Sarah said formally, I strongly suggest you contact your superiors and inform them that they are about to receive a communication from Earth Defense Command. The nature of that communication will depend largely on how I'm treated over the next few minutes. Through the facility's external sensors, which her enhanced systems had learned to access during her 3 days of confinement, Sarah could see the first ships emerging from hyperspace. They were sleek and deadly, their hull configurations unlike anything in the Dominion's databases. Earth had been busy during the past 2 decades of apparent peaceful cooperation. What do you want? Vextar repeated, but his tone had changed. The confident interrogator was gone, replaced by someone who was beginning to understand that his species might have badly miscalculated the threat posed by humanity. Simple, Sarah replied. I want to prevent a war that will cost both our civilizations more than they can afford, but that's going to require some very honest conversations between people with the authority to make binding agreements. The alarms were getting louder, and Sarah could hear the stamp of armored boots as facility security forces mobilized to deal with the external threat. She had maybe 10 minutes before the situation spiraled beyond anyone's ability to control. 10 minutes to prevent humanity's first galactic war, using nothing but words and the growing awareness that Earth's children were far more dangerous than anyone had suspected. The real test was just beginning. What happens when humanity says enough? The Dominion's most secure detention facility had never experienced a prison break. In 300 years of operation, not a single prisoner had escaped from Kronos 7's maximum security levels. The facility's designers had planned for every contingency, accounting for the unique abilities of dozens of species, the most advanced technology available, even coordinated uprising attempts by multiple prisoner factions. They had not planned for Phoenix. Sarah moved through the facility's corridors like liquid death, her enhanced senses processing information at superhuman speeds. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. Her bio-integrated systems had fully synchronized with Kronos 7's electronic infrastructure, giving her complete awareness of guard positions, security protocols, and structural weaknesses. Behind her, controlled explosions marked her passage as she systematically disabled the facility's most critical systems. Not random destruction, surgical strikes that would cripple their ability to prevent escape while minimizing casualties. The Prometheus Protocol had trained her to view even enemies as fellow sentients deserving of life, even if they had chosen poorly in their allegiances. Security Alert Level Red echoed through the facility's communication system. Prisoner Phoenix has breached containment. All units converge on Block 7. Authorization for lethal force granted. Sarah smiled grimly. They still thought of her as just one escaped prisoner. They had no idea that outside their moon, the largest fleet Earth had ever assembled was taking position for what might become humanity's introduction to galactic warfare. She reached cell block 12, where the facility's most dangerous prisoners were held. Her enhanced hearing had identified several beings whose crimes appeared to be political resistance rather than genuine threats to civilian populations. If she was going to start a war, she might as well ensure it began with an act of liberation rather than destruction. The cell doors were secured by energy fields that required both biometric identification and electronic authorization to open. Sarah placed her palm against the first door's scanner and allowed her bio-integrated systems to interface directly with the facility's security network. The scanner registered her as Commander Vextar, complete with valid authorization codes she had extracted during their brief conversation. The first cell contained what appeared to be a crystalline being, its form shifting between solid and liquid states as it communicated through harmonic vibrations. The creature had been imprisoned for leading a peaceful resistance movement against Dominion expansion into its home system. Human? It asked, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You are not supposed to be here. Neither are you, Sarah replied, moving to the next cell. The exit is down that corridor and to the left. There should be a maintenance shaft that leads to the docking bays. Wait for my signal before attempting to reach the ships. She continued down the corridor, releasing prisoners who had been arrested for crimes ranging from distributing pro-independence literature to refusing to surrender their planet's children for military conscription. Each liberation added another voice to the growing chaos as facility security struggled to understand how their systems had been so thoroughly compromised. Sarah's enhanced hearing caught the distinctive whine of charging energy weapons as a full security squad rounded the corner ahead of her. 12 guards in powered armor, carrying weapons designed to stop beings considerably more dangerous than baseline humans. Their tactical formation was textbook perfect, covering all possible escape routes while maintaining overlapping fields of fire. Against a normal prisoner, it would have been insurmountable. Against Phoenix, it was merely interesting. Sarah's enhanced reflexes allowed her to process the tactical situation in microseconds. The lead guard's weapon had a slight delay between trigger activation and energy discharge. The one on the left was favoring his right leg, suggesting an old injury that would affect his mobility. The two in back were positioned too close together, creating a vulnerability to area effect attacks. She moved before they could fire, her enhanced speed making her appear as little more than a blur to their unaugmented vision. The first guard's weapon discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as Sarah's precisely targeted strike rendered him unconscious without permanent injury. She flowed between the remaining guards like water, finding the spaces between stones, each movement economical and devastatingly effective. Within seconds, 12 of the Dominion's elite security personnel lay unconscious in the corridor. Sarah paused to check their vital signs, ensuring none had suffered serious injury, then continued toward her primary objective, the facility's command center. High above the prison moon's surface, space filled with the geometric shadows of warships as two fleets faced each other across the void. The Dominion forces were impressive, massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons that could crack planets, surrounded by clouds of smaller vessels designed for rapid strike operations. They had responded to the Earth fleet's arrival with the measured confidence of a military force that had never known defeat. The Earth ships were different, smaller, sleeker, their hulls incorporating design principles that made Dominion targeting systems struggle to achieve solid locks. Where Dominion vessels relied on overwhelming firepower and heavy armor, the human ships seemed built for speed and maneuverability, their exotic energy signatures suggesting propulsion systems that operated on entirely different principles. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the EDS Prometheus Rising, her flagship named in honor of the Guardians who served as humanity's ultimate insurance policy. Around her, tactical displays showed the disposition of both fleets while communication arrays maintained contact with the other 6 Prometheus units scattered throughout human space. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Dominion fleet. They're demanding immediate withdrawal from their territory." Rodriguez studied the tactical situation. The Dominion had responded faster than expected, but their positioning showed they expected a conventional engagement, ship against ship, firepower against firepower. They had no idea that humanity had spent 23 years preparing for exactly this scenario. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies, maximum range. I want every ship in both fleets to hear this." The main display flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Dominion flagship. Fleet Admiral Korthval commanded from a throne-like chair elevated above his subordinates, his reptilian features marking him as one of the Dominion's original species. He had personally overseen the conquest of 17 star systems, his tactical brilliance matched only by his complete ruthlessness toward species he considered inferior. "Human Commander," Korthval began, his voice carrying the harmonic authority of absolute power, "you are trespassing in Dominion space with an armed fleet. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences of your foolishness." Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward, her expression calm despite the weight of the moment. "Fleet Admiral Korthval, I am Admiral Elena Rodriguez of Earth Defense Command. We are here to retrieve our operative, who was illegally detained while conducting lawful salvage operations in neutral space." Korthval's scaled features shifted into what might have been amusement. "One human prisoner hardly justifies such a dramatic response. Your species has maintained peaceful relations with the Dominion for over 2 decades. Why risk that peace for a single individual?" "Because," Rodriguez replied, her voice carrying across space to every bridge in both fleets, "that individual is not just any human. She is one of our guardians, and harming her constitutes an act of war against Earth and all human colonies." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. "You have 5 minutes to release Captain Chen and all other prisoners currently held without justification at Detention Facility Chronos 7. Failure to comply will result in the activation of Protocol 7. The communication channel fell silent. Admiral Korthval conferred quietly with his advisors, their alien features animated by what was clearly heated discussion. Finally, he turned back to the display. "Protocol 7? Your intelligence services are thorough but not perfect. We have no record of any human military protocol by that designation." Rodriguez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Protocol 7 wasn't developed by our military, Admiral. It was developed by our entertainment industry, specifically our video game designers and science fiction writers. People who spent decades imagining what might happen if humanity ever needed to fight for its survival against impossible odds. She gestured, and the tactical display behind her shifted to show detailed schematics of the Earth fleet. Every ship you see was built according to specifications first imagined by people who thought faster-than-light combat looked boring in movies. Our weapon systems were designed by individuals who believed that space battles should be more interesting than standing in a field shooting at each other until someone falls down. Admiral Korthval's advisors were frantically accessing databases, trying to understand what they were facing. The energy signatures from the human ships weren't matching any known weapon configurations. Their movement patterns suggested propulsion systems that operated outside conventional physics. "You're bluffing," Korthval declared, though uncertainty colored his voice. "No species develops military technology based on entertainment media." "No species except humanity," Rodriguez corrected. "We've had a very long time to think about how we might defend ourselves against numerically superior forces with better conventional technology. The answer, it turns out, is to stop thinking conventionally." Deep within Chronos 7, Sarah reached the facility's command center. The massive chamber was designed like an amphitheater, with workstations arranged in concentric circles around a central holographic display that showed the tactical situation developing in space above them. Dozens of Dominion personnel worked frantically to coordinate the facility's defenses while monitoring the fleet engagement. Sarah's enhanced vision identified the center's weak points immediately. The primary data core was located beneath the central display, protected by energy shields that would normally require heavy weapons to penetrate. The backup communication arrays were hardened against electromagnetic pulse but vulnerable to physical disruption. Most importantly, the facility's self-destruct system was accessible from 3 separate terminals, any of which could be used to threaten the entire installation. She didn't want to destroy Chronos 7. The facility held thousands of prisoners, many of whom were political dissidents rather than genuine criminals. But the threat of destruction might be enough to force a negotiated settlement. Sarah moved into the command center like a force of nature. Her enhanced speed allowed her to disable the first wave of defenders before they could raise an alarm. Her bio-integrated systems interfaced with the facility's computer network, giving her administrative access to systems that should have required decades of security clearance to access. "Attention Chronos 7 personnel," she announced, her voice echoing through the command center's speakers as she simultaneously broadcast on all internal communication channels. "This is Captain Sarah Chen, call sign Phoenix, Earth Defense Force Prometheus Guardian. You have precisely 3 minutes to order the release of all political prisoners and establish direct communication with the fleet commanders above us." The facility's staff stared at her in shock. The human prisoner who had been scheduled for neural extraction that morning was now standing in their most secure location, having somehow bypassed every security measure they possessed. Commander Vextar, who had been coordinating the facility's response from his station, slowly raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Captain Chen, what are your demands?" "Simple," Sarah replied, her enhanced senses monitoring every person in the room for signs of hostile action. "Complete transparency about Dominion detention policies, immediate release of all prisoners held for political rather than violent crimes, and establishment of formal diplomatic protocols between Earth and the Dominion based on mutual respect rather than assumed superiority." She gestured toward the holographic display showing the confronting fleets. "Your admiral up there has about 2 minutes to decide whether he wants to discover what happens when humans stop being polite and start being creative." Above them, Admiral Korthval was reaching the same conclusion. His tactical analysts had finally identified the exotic energy signatures from the human ships. Controlled singularities, weaponized dark matter, and what appeared to be localized space-time manipulation systems. Technologies that shouldn't exist, operated by a species the Dominion had dismissed as primitives barely capable of interstellar travel. "They've been hiding their capabilities," his chief science officer reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "These aren't just advanced human ships, they're operating on principles our physics say are impossible." Admiral Korthval felt the cold touch of genuine fear for the first time in his military career. The Dominion had conquered 47 star systems by applying overwhelming force against species that fought according to predictable patterns. They had never faced an enemy that appeared to have developed military technology based on deliberate rejection of conventional limitations. "Open all channels," he ordered. "I want to speak directly with their guardian." The communication array crackled to life and Sarah's voice filled both command centers simultaneously. Fleet Admiral Korthval, this is Captain Chen. I trust you're beginning to understand that Earth is not as defenseless as your intelligence reports suggested. Captain Chen, Korthval replied carefully, I believe there has been a significant misunderstanding regarding your detention. The Dominion has no desire for conflict with a species capable of such creative military solutions. Sarah's enhanced hearing caught the subtle harmonics in his voice that indicated genuine respect rather than diplomatic maneuvering. Fear, yes, but also the kind of recognition that one apex predator gives another when they realize they might have bitten off more than they can chew. I'm glad to hear that, Admiral. However, this situation extends beyond my personal circumstances. Your empire has been systematically oppressing dozens of species based on the assumption that superior technology grants moral authority. That assumption needs to be reconsidered. She gestured toward the holographic display, which now showed not just the confronting fleets but a broader view of local space. Admiral Rodriguez, please show our new friends what we've been doing with our time. The space around Kronos 7 suddenly filled with new contacts as previously invisible ships decloaked throughout the system. Not just human vessels, but ships from a dozen species that the Dominion had supposedly conquered or pacified. The Crystalline Confederacy's harmonic resonance cruisers, the Veltar Collective's living ships that grew rather than being built, even representatives from species the Dominion considered extinct. For the past 5 years, Admiral Rodriguez explained, her voice now carrying to every ship in the system, Earth has been establishing diplomatic and military relationships with species seeking alternatives to Dominion hegemony. What you're seeing is the formation of the Galactic Cooperation Alliance, a coalition based on mutual aid rather than conquest. Admiral Korthaval's tactical displays were going insane as his computers tried to process the implications. The humans hadn't just been preparing for war, they had been organizing a galactic revolution. The Dominion suddenly found itself facing not one rebellious species, but a coordinated alliance that represented over half the star systems in their territory. This is impossible, Korthaval muttered. Our intelligence networks should have detected such activities. Sarah's laughter echoed through the communication system. Admiral, you've been looking for military buildups and weapon shipments. We use video game designers, social media influencers, and cultural exchange programs. Your surveillance systems aren't designed to recognize a revolution that spreads through memes and friendship. The standoff continued for several more minutes as both sides evaluated their options. The Dominion fleet could probably destroy the human ships, but the cost would be enormous, and it would still leave them facing a dozen other species whose capabilities remained unknown. More importantly, it would confirm to the entire galaxy that the Dominion maintained power only through violence. Finally, Admiral Korthval made his decision. Captain Chen, Admiral Rodriguez, I believe our respective civilizations would benefit from extended diplomatic discussions. I am prepared to order the immediate release of all political prisoners currently held at Kronos 7, and to establish formal communication channels between the Dominion and your alliance. Sarah smiled as she watched facility personnel beginning the process of releasing prisoners throughout the complex. That sounds like an excellent beginning, Admiral. Though I should mention that my fellow Guardians have some additional proposals regarding reparations for wrongfully imprisoned beings and establishment of neutral territories for species seeking independence. Your fellow Guardians? Oh yes, Sarah replied cheerfully. Remember those 6 other quantum signatures you detected? They're all awake now, and they've been even busier than I have. Guardian Wolf has been organizing labor strikes in the Dominion's mining colonies. Guardian Raven has been distributing freedom songs that have become massively popular among your younger populations. Guardian Bear has been teaching self-defense techniques to species your forces have been oppressing. She paused for effect. And Guardian Dragon has been very quietly reprogramming your automated defense networks to recognize friendship protocols. You might want to check your planetary shields. I believe you'll find they're now configured to protect refugee ships rather than prevent escape attempts. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Admiral Korthval's chief of security confirming that their most secure systems had indeed been compromised by someone with impossible access to Dominion technology. Captain Chen, Korthval said finally, his voice carrying a mixture of respect and resignation, I believe we need to discuss terms. 3 hours later, Sarah stood in the docking bay of Kronos 7, watching as the last of the released prisoners boarded transport ships provided by Alliance vessels. The crystalline being she had freed earlier had composed a harmonic symphony in her honor, its musical tones expressing gratitude in frequencies that made her enhanced hearing tingle pleasantly. Commander Vextar approached her cautiously, his forearms carrying what appeared to be official documentation. Captain Chen, these are the preliminary agreements between Detention Facility Kronos 7 and the Alliance. All political prisoners are to be released immediately, standards for prisoner treatment are to be revised according to Alliance humanitarian protocols, and a permanent Alliance liaison will be stationed here to monitor compliance. Sarah reviewed the documents quickly, her enhanced cognition processing the legal language at superhuman speed. This looks acceptable as a starting point. What about Admiral Korthval's negotiations with Admiral Rodriguez? Ongoing, Vextar replied. Both fleets have withdrawn to neutral positions while diplomats work out the details. I understand there are discussions about establishing joint research initiatives and cultural exchange programs. Sarah nodded. Good. Humanity works best when we're building things together rather than tearing them apart. She turned to look out through the docking bay's transparent barriers at the ships gathered in space beyond. Human vessels, Dominion cruisers, and the exotic craft of a dozen Alliance species, all maintaining careful formation while their crews work to establish the foundations of a new galactic order. Commander, she said thoughtfully, your empire spent centuries conquering species you considered inferior, but you never asked the really important question. Which was? Sarah smiled as she watched a human transport dock with a Veltar organic ship, their crews beginning the delicate process of cultural integration that would define the next phase of galactic civilization. What if they weren't inferior? What if they were just different, with capabilities you never bothered to recognize? She gestured toward the Alliance fleet. Humans aren't the strongest species in the galaxy, or the smartest, or the most technologically advanced, but we're very good at making friends and very creative about solving problems. It turns out those are exactly the skills the galaxy needed. As Sarah boarded the transport that would take her back to the EDS Prometheus Rising, she reflected on the events that had brought them to this point. A simple salvage mission had become first contact with humanity's hidden capabilities, then a prison break, then the foundation of a new approach to galactic politics. The Prometheus Guardians had been created to protect humanity from extinction-level threats. They had succeeded, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of fighting to preserve human civilization, they had helped create something entirely new, a galactic community based on cooperation rather than conquest. Behind her, Kronos 7 began its transformation from a symbol of oppression to a monument to the possibility of change. Ahead of her, the stars beckoned with promises of discoveries yet to be made and friendships yet to be forged. The sleeping giant had awakened, looked around at the galaxy surrounding it, and decided that what the universe really needed was a helping hand. And as Admiral Rodriguez had learned during her years of service, when humanity decided to help, extraordinary things became possible.